Well, you're going to go with the one you like.
I'm just going to say there's a variety of versions.
But when you started out this pathetic thing, before we checked sources, you said it was like 10 people got killed and they weren't even Russian.
All right, according to Syrian military sources, which probably can't be
So
trusted.
you went with the Syrian version.
There's a bunch of different fucking sources, and you can yell at me about it, but according to Syria, there's a bunch of some 55 pro-government fighters were killed, including around 10 Russian fighters.
But that's the version
all right, so
you went
we
with.
don't have to believe that. But Der Spiegel published their own investigative report based on evidence gleaned from multiple first-hand sources, participants and witnesses in the area, which concluded that the ferocious American response was primarily triggered by a unit of Syrian tribal militia and Shiite fighters moving from the town of Al-Tabaya towards Kashan late on 7 February, concurrently with another group of pro-government forces that had crossed the Euphrates near the advancing towards Kashan from the village of Marat. According to Der Spiegel's report, no Russians were in either formation, yet there was a small contingent of Russian mercenaries stationed in Al-Tabaya who were not participating in the fighting, notwithstanding that between 10 and 20 of the Russians were killed in the U.S. strikes, while most of the formation's deaths were among the servicemen of the 4th Division of the Syrian Army. Similarly, the UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights reported that 68 pro-government fighters were killed, including 45 who died in the coalition airstrikes, most being Syrians. Remaining 23 pro-government personnel, including 15 Russian mercenaries, were not killed in the airstrikes, but instead caught in a booby-trapped explosion at an arms depot. The mercenaries were accompanying government forces as they advanced towards the SDF-held oil and gas fields. Then we already talked about the Russians. Oh wait, no we didn't. But the Russians agree with the U.S., kind of. Some Russian sources, contrary to the claims of hundreds of deaths among the mercenaries, a Russian investigative group, I guess the guy who fell out the window, confirmed 10 contractor deaths and estimated a total of between 20 and 30 had died. A Russian journalist also believed between 20 and 25 died. On 17th of February, a Wagner leader, Andrei Troshev, was quoted as saying 14 mercenaries died in the battle. 3 other Wagner commanders also stated the claim of 200 dead was an exaggeration, that 15 mercenaries were killed at the most. Now this is, I don't know, I guess they're trying to minimize it because they're embarrassed or whatever. That would be your analysis. So anyway, there's a bunch of different numbers and different stories about what percentage of the forces were Russians versus...
Rick, let me tell you something. We have a show here.
Yeah.
You can't read the whole article.
I'm done. I'm done.
Okay, fine. Rick, in order to save yourself so that you
But there's all this shit you didn't tell me. You didn't tell me that the U.S. was I guess you didn't think it mattered. You didn't tell me that the U.S. commander was in contact with the Russian commander throughout the battle. And you could have told me that, and you could have explained your theory was that was just to put the Russians in a box, which would allow us to attack.
No.
I mean, you didn't tell me that. You did tell me they were mercenaries. Fine.
Rick, I didn't need to tell you all the details of the battle.
You did, because the details tend
they
to
don't
mitigate your bullshit.
No, they don't. The fact that the Russian and the American commanders were talking doesn't mean anything. It had no effect whatsoever because the Russians denied it, and we knew they were Russian, and we killed them. And now you're willing to take the view of the actual Russian mercenaries number, 14, over our CIA. 10 minutes ago, you were saying that the CIA, our intelligence said that the Russians were colluding with Trump. So you'll believe the CIA if they're saying Trump is colluding with Russia, but if the CIA says that we killed 200 Russian mercenaries, then you don't believe them. Instead, you're taking the view of the mercenaries. Their body count was only 14, so that's the one you believe.
No, but I'm saying that there's a whole range of...
Yeah, and listen, it's not a number thing. I know you like math.
It is, though,
no,
because
it
you've
isn't.
been, in fact, you're the guy who's making the big deal about the numbers. You started with 500, then you said it was 200 or 100. It's hundreds, you say.
Yes, I am.
And you're arguing for 200 being the number. So apparently numbers do matter to you.
Well, no, they matter to you, because my point is that you're saying that if I get 3 views, the Syrian, the Russian, and the American, then you'll go with the fact that there are 2 views saying that the lower number, the Russian and the Syrian. In other words, it's not a math issue. The fact that there are other sources that will back up your delusion doesn't matter. I'm going with the more credible source, the United States.
So let's say it's 200.
Yes, but I think it might have been more. That is my view.
Yeah, okay.
Because what the articles I read, among others, said that the dispatches that they surveilled, the documents they had where they had transcripts of the Russian mercenaries speaking to one another, said it was a slaughter. They were annihilated.
Yeah, apparently the battle, they massed. A few hundred troops massed on the other side of this bridge.
And
then they fired 30 to 50 rockets at the Americans plus the Syrians.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but it does, because you left out a lot of the shit that would at least require some explaining.
No, it doesn't, because your argument is that Trump is colluding with Russia and therefore he would never harm Russia. And I'm telling you, if the man is willing to kill hundreds of Russian soldiers, then he is not colluding with Russia. It defies logic.
Now, what would you have the commander on the ground do?
If I was colluding with Russia, I would say, you leave those Russians alone.
Because, we did pull out of Kurdistan, the Kurdish area of Syria.
That's in the north, dear.
Right.
That's in the north.
And we pulled out.
This was in a different area, guys.
That's fine, but it's still Syria. We pulled out of that part of Syria, and where we left, the Russians came in.
The reason we pulled out of that area is because our troops were surrounded. We had less than 2,000 men. We had about 12, maybe 1,200 guys that were surrounded by massive Russian and Turkish and Syrian forces. If anything happened, they were going to be killed in a second.
How many Americans did we have there? Like 40 in Kasham?
No.
100, 200?
No.
We didn't have 2,000?
No, we had 40 in advanced positions.
Okay.
Behind them, we had a massive force. So it was, Trump was playing with those guys' lives. If he hadn't pulled them out of Kurdistan and anything had gone wrong, they would have been wiped out.
Well, why not send more guys in? Because he doesn't want to have boots on the ground? Is the man of peace?
The reason
you can make that argument.
It was a strategically untenable position. He pulled them back to an area that we could more easily defend, and because he didn't want mission creep. Now, ever since Bush invaded Iraq, the Democrats have made a big fuss over America trying to do too much. So what Trump's main argument was about the recent pullout in Syria was that his goal was to, 1, crush ISIS. Way down from the list on that goal was to make sure that the Kurds were not annihilated, which he succeeded at. But his goal was not mission creep. That is, to create an independent Kurdistan.
What's creepy...
No, I'm not finished.
Yeah,
I'm not finished. You asked me a question.
Did I?
You said, what was his purpose? The purpose was...
I think I said that.
Okay. If he had kept the 1,200, the 2,000 or 1,200 guys in the middle between Turkish and Syrian and Russian forces, he would have had to have fought with the Kurds to create an independent Kurdistan. That was not our goal.
How long is
our goal, when we finally pulled them out a couple of months ago, was to arrange a treaty with Turkey that would guarantee the survival of the Kurdish people in that area.
Well, that sounds good, but it also sounds like the mission creep there was to allow Russian forces to creep in there and take a chunk of Syria.
Actually, Rick, now that you bring that up, the Russian forces did not invade Syria for several years because they were watching to see what Obama would do with the gigantic force we had right next door in Iraq.
So the mission
So
creep is
what
to withdraw.
happened was the Russians saw that your president was weak and I believe treasonous. And when they saw for several years he was unwilling to take a side in the Syrian civil war, right in front of us, right under Obama's nose, they deliberately started landing troops in Syria.
All right, that's...
It was Obama that allowed the Russians to go back into Syria. The man you voted for twice.
Fine.
He left it a mess. Just one more thing that Obama did wrong and was supported, by the way, in his treasonous and irresponsible inaction. He was supported by the whole Democrat Party.
So just like the stock market and unemployment, it started with Obama and Trump just continued it.
I'm not going to argue with you.
All right,
about
do you
that.
want to do Nunez or you want to just...
Well, wait. Actually, I should argue with you about that. The stock market is at record highs. If Trump was a poor steward of the economy, it would have... The Democrats were predicting depression. They said the country, if Trump was elected, the country would go into a depression. And now the economy is
Who was
dramatically
predicting that?
superior. It was the Democrat economists. I mean, I can name names if I can remember them.
Yeah, but I mean, all right, so here's the deal. Just to be fair, hold on, just to be fucking fair, a lot of people were expecting the stock market to freak out and drop when Trump got elected because clown show. And contrary to that, it did pop up, the Dow popped up a couple hundred points when he was elected. So, but you could argue, and I'd agree with you, that it popped up because people thought, tax cut, which came through. You could argue, and he should argue that that's his signature accomplishment.
Well, not only that, but not only is the economy doing better because even if unemployment was going down under Obama, the actual wages of the blue-collar workers now are dramatically higher.
If
So
3% is dramatic.
they're actually going up. So in other words, they're not only more employed, but they're getting more money. The blue-collar sector is getting more money, and that was not occurring under Obama.
So that is going to be Trump's major argument for re-electing.
And crushing ISIS.
I'd say more the economic stuff.
Well, it depends on what kind of person you are. I thought allowing ISIS to kill 250,000 people was more important than a little extra dough in everybody's pocket, but I'll take both.
All right, so we got more shit to talk about. I guess we're going to skip Nunez's ridiculous lawsuits.
Yeah, let's go on to some.
All right,
funny
what's the
stuff.
next thing, which
Okay.
is the View.
Yeah.
All right, our director pointed out that Meghan McCain is apparently found to be annoying by a lot of people. Though Whoopi Goldberg, she gets in a lot of fights. She's there are one or two conservatives among the 5 women of The View. Our director said, we are the guy version of The View. And I guess that's fine, but really, who fucking cares? We're not changing anybody's mind. Who cares what a bunch of women on morning TV say? And the deal is, there are plenty of articles, and the statistics back it up, that people's minds aren't being changed. So I was thinking, I think this a lot. I asked the question, what would change people's minds? And the only thing I can think of, and maybe you can come up with one too, is if fucking Jesus came back. And not just regular man of the people Jesus who walks around and does some really subtle miracles, but fucking Jesus who floats 3 feet off the ground and has a glow. And can zap people, can reverse rapture people down to hell for being assholes. if though I don't know if he'd do that, but if Jesus comes back and starts throwing lightning bolts, I think that might convince 5 to 10% of the Trump. And if he comes back and he says, you, Franklin Graham, and you, and you, and you, you're not being really Christian. The lessons I taught in the Bible, I don't think you're following them. I think that might change the minds of maybe 10% of the base. And the other 90% would say CG effects. Do you have any, now you go.
Well, I have not allowed myself to be optimistic until something happened this week that I thought was very significant. And that is that the UK had an election where the Conservatives
Trounced.
Well, I was going to say massacred, but the leftists. And it was the worst defeat mathematically that the left has had in 100 years. The Conservatives have taken over Britain. And the way that it happened was the leftists put up a guy that is
not a good guy.
I read about this guy.
Terrible candidate, Jeremy Corbyn.
And it turns out he's a pretty basic. It is not unreasonable to say that he's basically a Marxist. He basically wants to bring Britain closer to being a communist country.
What about the anti-Semitism from Jeremy?
Yeah, well, I have yet to read the actual quotes, but that is what he is accused of. So I have a variety of nasty leftist qualities that this guy has.
Yeah, but you could just say...
Would you let me say something? Because you asked me to talk, and now you're interrupting.
I never asked you to talk.
No, you said now you talk.
Okay, you're right.
Because you went into this long thing about Jesus coming back, and now I have something reasonable to say, but I can't get a word out. Okay. So, the reason that he lost, the communists lost, is that people in Britain that haven't voted conservative in 80 years, in 100 years, finally said to hell with it. People in the middle of Britain. And they elected a very conservative leader who, number one, is going to bring Britain out of the European Union, which is very left-wing. Number two, he's going to oppose the left-wing policies of the other candidate, but and also, I don't live in Britain. I haven't researched it much, but I know that he's somewhat anti-immigration. That he's kind of apparently. I know our millions of viewers in Britain can correct me on this, but he's not that enthusiastic about bringing millions of Islamic people into Britain. So
you're talking Boris Johnson.
Boris
the
Johnson,
winning candidate.
Boris Johnson has they call him the British Trump.
Except I would say he's clowny, but I'd say that he's much less clowny than Trump. He does a lot of clowny shit, but there's some basic competence. Not a great deal, but more than Trump.
Okay. So, you said what would change people's minds. To get back to the question you asked me. And another thing that we found, and this was on a CNN poll, is that fewer Democrats and independents support impeachment now than they did a month ago. So all these hearings and votes and resolutions are working against the Democrats. And
you can slightly make that argument because it's a matter of a couple percentage points.
Yeah. But when Nixon was finally removed from office, his poll numbers were in the 20s. He was wildly unpopular.
That's true.
So
but
let me get a statement off, Rick. It's so interesting. You won't let me answer. Now I'm going to answer the question, Rick. Really? Okay. So here's the situation. Rick asked me what would change people's minds. I think people's minds are changing. I think they've changed. I think what's happening is that the average person in Britain, the average person in America is fed up with political correctness. We are voting to reduce. By the way, this week the Democrats began to loosen up all the limits that they put on Trump building a wall. So we are.
Didn't they have a defeat in court about that? Trump can't divert funds meant for other military.
Was that this week?
No, that was like 2 weeks ago.
Well, what I'm saying is he's getting the wall built, and we are, in my opinion, people's minds are changing. I think people have finally become fed up with political correctness and with the left and with leftism and with Marxism, which would be a disappointment to you, Rick, but that's what I think has happened. I think people are throwing off the shackles, and furthermore, Trump is ahead. Now, I said this before, but I'm going to say a little bit more. I know I'm talking too much, but a little bit more. In order for every time the Democrats win, it's when they have 90% of the black vote. And several reputable polls show that the blacks have a favorable view of Trump, 34%, the highest since the time of the Eisenhower administration. He's the most popular Republican president in I don't know, maybe 60 years. And furthermore, the critical states, Pennsylvania, I think Michigan, and maybe Wisconsin, 3 of the blue wall states now have Trump ahead of all the Democrat candidates. And they were very, very iffy. They were very, very slightly. Trump just barely won them, but now they're enthusiastically supportive of him in several polls, and over any Democrat candidate, and he's winning polls nationally over every Democrat.
All right,
candidate.
so let's talk polls. So I will admit that his approval, I like looking at sets of polls where somebody who's mathematically sophisticated compiles all the polls and gives you an overall number. And his approval has bumped up about 1.5% over the past week, which is huge for him because his approval stays pretty steady. So that is a thing. But there are other things. The country is roughly split evenly. 50% for impeachment and removal, and 50% not in favor of that. Also, 70% of the country, and I gotta admit that's based on I don't know how many polls, but probably not enough, is in favor of, if it goes to the Senate, of witnesses against Trump being allowed to testify, because under what it looks like is going to happen with McConnell running, including 60%, 4% of Republicans want witnesses on both sides being allowed to testify. And about the 34% approval among black people, I'd like to see a whole pack of polls.
There are a whole pack on that one. That particular one was so incredible and the Democrats were so shocked by that it turns out that even on I seem to recall CNN people saying, well, we need to see several polls, and there are several different polls that say that black people are warming up to Trump.
All right, I'd still like to look it up.
I mean, we can look it up, but the point is that if we look it up, you're going to lose again.
Okay, one more thing.
And you're going to have to accept that right now, if you were a betting man, you should bet the house that Trump will win in 2020, and that's what has changed people's mind. That's evidence.
I'm not betting against him. I got a couple more things. When impeachment proceedings started against Nixon, support I think there are two major differences between now and Nixon. One is you've got the 3-hour power hour in the evening on Fox News. Hannity, Tucker Carlson, and Laura Ingraham. And in the morning, you've got, I don't know how many hours, probably 3 more hours of Fox and Friends. And you've got this turbine that pumps out. There were 3 channels on the air, and they were all fairly politically neutral when Nixon was happening in 72, 73. Now you've got, these 24-hour news channels that each play to their base, and that keeps people revved up. That's thing one. Thing two is, thanks largely to gerrymandering, I'd say that today's politicians are shittier than the politicians of 50 years ago. And now, I think the main lesson of Britain is don't put up a creep for election. Don't put up a Jeremy Corbyn. See if you can find somebody more charismatic. And that is nervous making because nobody among the current candidates has the charisma of Obama. And we don't have the financial crisis that we had. I'm hoping that somebody turns out to be sufficiently charismatic. Biden, I'm hoping his charisma outweighs his oldness and his handsiness. I'm hoping that Elizabeth Warren, when it moves to the general, turns out to be charismatic. I have a theory that the party heads, the heads of the DNC and the RNC, tend to be creepy people who work really hard. They want to be part of this party. They would love to run for office, but when you look at them, there's isn't the DNC head named Tom Perez or something? I don't know. And then,
Perez.
Okay. When you look at them, you're like, no, nobody's going to vote for you. You give people the willies. So you put them in charge of a non-electoral position, the head of the party. So, I'd say the Democrats should, you call me shallow, but you need people who are charismatic. Fucking Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who's she's a representative, a Democrat, and she's been high up in somebody should take her, put her in a room, and straighten her fucking hair. She's got the weirdest 70s style super perm hair. It's like, it's creepy. I'm sorry, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, but uncreepify. I'd say that Trump's neck with its waddles is nothing to crow about, but you could get a Schrift to do some neck curls. You lie on a bench, you get a guy with a towel to push on your head, and you push it back. So get him to have a thicker neck, nice hefty neck. Anyway, all right, what's the next thing?
Well, we had a question for you.
Okay.
Someone asked why the universe is so old. This was weeks ago. We're getting around.
Oh yeah, I'd say because. All right, so sameness is an important property of the universe. It helps you understand the universe. That the laws of physics are the same here and 10 billion light years from here. And under the Big Bang Theory, the universe is the same at every point. That the universe expanded from a point, that point's gone, but that point expanded into the surface, of the 3-dimensional surface of a 4-dimensional balloon, with every point on that surface being equal. There's no special point, according to Big Bang Theory, because it's like a firework exploding from this one point, but with no straggly sparks. All the sparks are part of this expanding sphere, and they're all equal. They're all equally far from the initial point. They're all moving the same way. The universe is homogeneous in space and in Hubble velocity, which is just how fast the entire universe is expanding. When the Big Bang Theory came out in the 50s, there was a rival theory called steady state theory that postulated that the universe is the same over time, that the universe apparently was expanding, but in the empty spaces between galaxies, new matter was forming. So eventually you'd have new galaxies popping up. So over time, the universe would always look the same because as galaxies got farther apart, new galaxies would appear to fill in the gaps, and so you had homogeneity in time. My thinking on the universe is that the universe is made of information. And when you think of how information works in our minds, I would say that roughly, except when we're asleep or wasted, roughly when our whole brain is engaged, then the amount of active information in our brains, it doesn't vary 1,000-fold or 1,000,000-fold. It might vary 8-fold. But but if you graph the amount of information that's active in our awareness from moment to moment, discounting times when your brain is mostly shut off, when you're semi-shut off when you're asleep, or when you're tripping balls, that the variation in the amount of information being manipulated by your awareness, by your brain, doesn't vary that much, like Trump's poll numbers. And if the universe is made of information, and the size of the universe is proportional to the amount of information in it, then the universe should be roughly homogeneous over time. And the amount of information, your awareness consists of rough moments. I was thinking roughly this at this moment, and then that kind of smeared into this at this moment. It's hard to pin down because your brain has all these abilities to smooth out consciousness. So, when one part of your brain learns something faster than the other part, it doesn't usually confuse you. But you have these smeared out moments. And if each of these moments contains roughly the same amount of information, and that you have, say you have 3 moments a second for every waking hour, then you've got you've got 150,000 moments in a day, or roughly. And if you're extending that analogy to the universe's information processing, then it's going to have a bunch of moments. Those moments are each going to have roughly the same amount of information. So what appears to be a universe that's expansive and only 13.8 billion years old, that 13.8 billion is is an apparent age. It's the measure of how much information is in this moment of the universe. And each moment might extend across 10 or 20 or 30 billion years. And if each moment is that long, and the universe, like us, thinks a gazillion moments in any reasonable period of time, then you're talking a gazillion times 20 billion, and that's why the universe is so old. So, and my thinking is that the universe is roughly homogeneous more homogeneous in time than in space, because my thinking is that you can actually, when you look back in the universe, when the farther away you look in the universe, the older the shit you're seeing is, because it had to travel farther to get here. So you're seeing if something's 5 billion light years away, you're seeing something that's more than 5 billion years old, because I think if you do the math, because it's when it, I forget, but anyway, it's at least 5 billion. That picture is at least 5 billion years old. So I think that in an information universe, there's actually a younger, a more collapsed, an inhomogeneous universe that actually has a collapsed region close to apparent T0, which is an actual T0. So when you look back towards the beginning of time, because shit's so far away that you're seeing information light that left near the beginning of time, you're actually seeing parts of the universe that are different now than other parts of the universe. So my universe is more homogeneous in time than the Big Bang universe and less homogeneous in space, which probably isn't that great an explanation, but there you go. All right, what's next? Director.
Yes, so we got the, hold on a second. The shittiest time of the year.
Oh yeah, last week we were talking about, I think it's the shittiest time of the year, and I explained how, the days are short and cold. Even in LA, our director, wearing a hat and a scarf and a jacket. We've got we have a heat gun aimed at us and one aimed at the director. It gets cold in LA. It drops into the upper 40s sometimes, Fahrenheit. And so we have to be nice. We treat each other. We give each other gifts. We get drunk. We eat stuff that tastes good. We get together with family. All this stuff designed to comfort us as the earth rapidly decays. It goes, from being full of squirrels and trees with fruit on them to bare trees and ice-covered ground. And one way to make it better, I think, is, what do we call it? Christmas saving time?
Oh, Christmas saving your lifetime.
Christmas saving your lifetime. And what I suggest is...
Savings your lifetime. Christmas savings.
It's like daylight savings time, except more extreme. Starting on December 17th, we move the clock 4 hours. So what would be 3 p.m., we now call 7 p.m. Because during the last week before Christmas, everybody drives like a fucking asshole trying to get everything done, and they're trying to do it in the dark because the sun set at like 3:30 in the afternoon. Now everything's dark, everybody's driving like a dick. In the cold parts of the country, the sun goes down, and then you get glare ice. And so if we just cut 4 hours off the day, so what should be 3 p.m. is 7 p.m. now. It would still be light, and until 7:30, you can get more of your shit done without it being in the dark and driving on so much ice. And then on Christmas Day, you get those 4 hours back. Christmas Day, the most wonderful day of the year, according to some people. You got a 28-hour day to enjoy your friends and family and eggnog and football and
Well, who can argue with that? Anything else?
Yes.
One more. When we drive down here, we drive past, there's a new accident lawyer in town, Sweet James, he says. Get in an accident, go to Sweet James. And I don't know why you'd want to go to a lawyer named Sweet James, except it gets your attention because you're asking, why would I go to a lawyer named Sweet James? So it sticks in your head. There's another lawyer who just puts his billboards up around LA upside down and flipped mirror-wise. And it's like, why would you? It's like, okay, because I've never seen that before. I guess that's going to stick in my head too. But I have a theory that the names that people use, the headlines on accident lawyers' billboards are also what they call their penises. So Sweet James calls his penis Sweet James. And the Accidente guy is like, when he sees Mrs. Accidente, he's like, come here and have an accident with Accidente, El Accidente. And Larry H. Parker, he just calls his dick, come here, honey, come stroke Larry H. Parker.
So
just a theory.
You're saying accidente because it's not a planned pregnancy.
Oh, that's double duty.
All right. So what else have we got?
Also, Elvis's
there's
nickname
more.
for his penis, laziest possible nickname, Little Elvis. All right.
Which coincidentally is the name of my penis. That's a rare coincidence. Think about that.
I don't have a nickname for my penis. It's an okay penis, but really it's It's not the best penis at this point. Because I'm on testosterone blocker to try to keep my hair. I'm 59 years and 7.5 months old. You know, it's seen.
Didn't you say that the name of your penis was Thor?
No, sore because it takes so long. You know, that you get abrasions.
All right, I'm gonna tell a story, and because you're a professional, you're gonna guess where I'm going with this story. But so don't, because you'll ruin it.
Okay.
I was hanging out with a feminist woman the other day, and she was trying to make a point of some kind. I don't know if this was a fantasy or if she was trying to get me to be more sensitive. She's a Democrat. She's a feminist, and she said to me, Lance, if you could be any woman in the world, who would you be? And I said, can it be a woman from history, any period? She said, yeah. And I thought, and I said, Melania Trump. So I just wanted to leave you with that, because that's
All right. I'd be Jennifer
a
Lawrence.
lot of
'cause-
meaning in there. Go ahead.
I'd be Jennifer Lawrence because she's 28. She might live long enough to get all these bonus years thanks to medical technology, or somebody even younger, Ariana Grande. I just picked the youngest possible woman because I want the medical technology.
But I picked Melania Trump.
Okay, well, you're free to do that. Speaking of womanly
I'm
stuff,
just saying, because
oh, yeah, because he's not going to live forever.
because she is underneath our greatest president, whenever he can actually do that.
Yeah,
Think about that. Our greatest president. Imagine the honor. All right, so
Wait,
He is on her.
she's dug up Abraham Lincoln.
all right.
And so there was a thing on Twitter where I live about the Federalist, which is a website, a conservative website, where somebody was quite upset because she'd wrote a column. She'd gone shopping for a 3-year-old boy at a toy store.
She was looking for a 3-year-old boy?
A 3-year-old boy.
She went shopping for a 3-year-old boy.
Some woman, a
You
friend
can,
of.
you can shop for a 3-year-old boy.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. Well, I mean, they're cheaper than 3-year-old girls, but the salesperson had among her recommendations included a tea set. And the person writing for the Federalist was all up in arms. You know, what do they say? Dogs and cats sleeping together, it's the end of the world. And this sent me off on a rant about how I've always liked pretty shit, and some of that shit is girly, and that has never stopped me from wanting to bang girls, women, adult women, and actually having done some primo banging during my good banging days. And that it has nothing to do, I've said before, I went to my female cousin's birthday party when I was 5, and one of the activities was sewing, and I sewed my mom a potholder and my stepdad an ape shit, but I enjoyed sewing, and I still do. I can really put on a button. I can put on a button that'll never come off. And I like pretty shit. I go on eBay and I buy my wife, like, you know, this is so bourgeois, but I found a Yadro sculpture. They're porcelain sculptures of elegant people, and they're definitely white people problem sculptures. But I found one for like $17. That should have been like 120 because one of the hands had broken off. And I was like, that's pretty. Even though she's only got 6 fingers left, that's worth the 80+% discount. And it doesn't affect my masculinity. I am so performatively male. I've said this before, it's a form of drag. I go to the gym 2 hours a day. When I was in the 1980s, when I wanted to look badass, I carved 8 feet of scars into my flesh so I'd look like Conan and Rambo. And anyway, and look, you're in the business of pretty shit. When you paint your shit, you want to make it look real, but you also want to make shit look pretty, right? Aesthetically pleasing.
I would say that I did not feel like painting is not a masculine profession. And I didn't feel like a man until I started carving stone. Then I felt more comfortable with that for some reason. But
Carving stone?
yeah, this is a stone carving actually right here. This was whacked out of a solid piece of stone by muscle and blood, and steel. So anyway, I did feel like a man when I did this. But I think it's very significant that that the woman was offered a tea set because I have a little personal knowledge of this. I used to work for 3 years. I worked at Mattel Toys sculpting in the sculpture department. So toys are sculpted. People think they're made by elves, but they're actually made by sculptors. And so
You might have a Harry Potter that began with his fingers.
right. Okay. So I used to sculpt the figures for the action figures and the portraits. So the point is that we had two divisions, boys' toys and girls' toys. And we had those divisions because there were clearly differences in what the boys would want and what the girls wanted.
Wait, I have a quick question.
We knew that, and that was our business.
You sculpt one, and then from there, the machine makes a whole bunch of them.
Well,
or
you make
each
a-
one is individual.
You make a metal mold.
Well, you send it to China, and China fucks it up, and then they make a bunch of them.
Yeah, you remember that.
I do,
That
because
is so
when you
funny.
look at your original, and then you look at what came back from China, it's like, oh, fuck.
Actually, we can have some
Show and tell.
Wow.
Wow, do we want to do that?
No,
Yeah.
because who knows?
Let's
like,
not do that. All right. So I
So then you make one prototype, and then from there,
yeah,
Okay.
you make one, and they make a metal mold of it, and then they inject into the mold the toys.
I mean, the
So-
ones you make, it's like there's a little actual Harry Potter person standing on your frickin' desk.
Thank you. Yeah, but that is theoretically if I happen to have some here that I could show you, but it's a shame that I don't. Anyway, so my point is that boys and girls at the earliest age begin to choose different toys, and to be offering the kid a tea set is it's confusing, and it's unfair to the boy to try to give him a confusing girl's toy. I mean, what are we trying to do? Change the kid? If he follows his natural bent, the boy will want cars, he'll want sports equipment, he'll want video games, and the girls will want dolls and babies and tea sets so they can talk with their other little girlfriends.
Well,
And that's the way it is. Sorry.
to some extent, there's still some crossover. I like a nice looking tea set. And I played some house in preschool, and
Yeah,
I liked it because I got to hang with girls who I thought were cute. And if
There's crossover, but when you were let loose in a toy store,
I liked cars.
you wouldn't run over to the little girl dolls. You just wouldn't.
I didn't like Barbie.
Yeah, you weren't interested.
But I liked cars. I liked planes.
Which are
building-
boys' toys.
Yeah.
So my point is, why is this person working at a store trying to confuse these kids?
I mean,
It's very significant.
I like. You know what I like?
Why is it that leftists can't leave our children
Well,
alone?
but you know what's cool, and
No,
you
I
don't
just
know. Let's
wanna
know.
know.
You know what's cool. I know you think it's cool
It-
too. Is little versions of shit. Don't you like when you? I know in your office you bought shit that was 1/128th scale figures. That means that an adult human is a half inch tall. And you bought them so you could see how
Yeah.
much detail could be achieved.
Right, I wanted to see, because when I worked at Mattel, they kept giving me jobs where every single project, I'd have to make smaller and smaller figures, until finally, I was sculpting figures the size of a pinky nail. And they actually had people with a magnifying glass at Universal Studios examining whether the portrait was accurate.
Well, there's a guy, when my wife was visiting my kid, there's an artist in England who makes sculptures that fit within the eye of a needle.
Wow.
And it's
Is
fun,
the
they're
eye
cool.
the pointy part?
No, it's the hole that the thread goes through.
Oh, okay.
And they're freaking cool. And of course you need a microscope to see them. But at a bigger scale, it's always cool. Like when I was a kid, I didn't give a shit about football, but I had the whole set of NFL helmets that were all about 1.25 inches tall. And they were so cool because they were so small. Small versions of shit they're just awesome. So I could see, with not much encouragement, I could see setting being, it wouldn't be a dollhouse exactly, but it would not be a dollhouse. I could see building a room if I had access to that was like a 1/20th scale room of, it might be a mad scientist, it might be my ideal room, it would have a 1/20th scale Playboy bunny, given that it's me when I'm 9 years old or something. And one more thing about masculinity.
Well, wait, I'm going to respond to that.
Okay.
This is played out because one of the things in the original Disneyland is that Walt Disney liked miniatures too. And so there are several rides at Disneyland where there are miniature worlds. So, and they're still there, they're 80-year-old rides. So it's true, people do like miniatures, God knows why.
I just want to give a shout out to the most masculine men on earth, pirates. And I would argue that it's possible to be so masculine that you fuck guys. Now, you love pirates. You love Pirates of the Caribbean. But I would argue that they're so masculine. They'll have sex with women on land, but when they get out to sea, that masculinity is expressed by "Arr! Come here, peg boy." And I mean, manly men,
It happens in prison all the time.
What?
It happens in prison all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, those guys, criminals, also masculine, also needing to have sex, so masculine that they will, so,
Well, the thing about prison, though, that people don't realize is that the people that get raped are men that look more like women.
yeah.
So, in other words, the most popular men to rape in prison are men that look like women. So it's not that they're gay; it's that they're horny and they're being criminals already. They have poor impulse control.
All right, good point, but I would bet you that there's still some. I don't know. I mean, I don't fucking know.
All
I've been
right.
lucky enough not to go to prison, but I'd assume that there'd be some other, like, man-appreciating manly men under the guise of, well, it's prison. We only have guys to. Well, but who knows? But
Well,
anyway.
this is, by the way, you know what? This is you're actually on the verge of supporting my argument, because in early documents from ancient history, among them the Caesar's commentaries, he said that when they captured prisoners, the Roman army would rape them all, and it didn't matter if they were male or female. So especially they would rape the boys. But my point is that the reason that isn't being done anymore is because the Judeo-Christian ethic has altered people's behavior over the past few thousand years, so that the natural inclination of humans to be bisexual has by the Judeo-Christian ethic and prohibitions on homosexuality.
I would
So
argue that
that's why when the American or German army captured people in World War II, they didn't rape them. They might very well rape the women, but not the men and the boys.
I'd say just equally important, at least, is the golden rule, which has taught people to look at other people as having the same feelings that you do.
Right,
And
but the German army wasn't behaving by the golden rule. The German army was notorious for war crimes, and they still didn't rape the men and the boys. They raped the women. So what
yeah, I only give that like 1.5 stars in terms of war behavior.
The way this works is the brain is got the ego, the id, and the superego. The superego is the part of the personality that is influenced by society. If society is Judeo-Christian and prohibits homosexual sex, fewer people will feel comfortable with acting out homosexual behavior. So my point has been all along that if you want more homosexual behavior, as Rick does,
I just don't give a shit.
then you can have it.
That's pretty weak
And
tea,
and
which
if-
can
and
go
if
in
you
your
want-
miniature
and if-
tea
And
set.
if you want less, you can have that too.
Or you can just not give a shit.
Right, and if you don't give a shit, you'll have more, because humans.
There's a difference between
Because humans are naturally
There's a
bisexual.
difference between consensual sex, obviously, and rape. And it's bad.
I'm not talking about rape. I'm saying that humans naturally will just fuck anything.
Okay. I mean, you grew up right around the golden age of Hollywood.
No, well, wait, that's a separate issue. I just want to.
Yeah, but those guys, all beautiful, they went crazy fucking each other regardless of gender. And they were protected by the studio PR people and cops and whatever it was, but
Well, that's a separate issue. I mean, if you want to change subjects, did I ever mention that my parents did a film with Rock Hudson?
yeah,
And that, I don't know if I mentioned on camera.
pillow talk.
Yeah, but apparently everyone knew he was gay.
It was probably hard to miss. Apparently the
yeah.
parties he would throw and his backyard, which was filled with like sculptures, Roman sculptures of hot naked dudes. It was and parties with hot naked dudes. It was hard to miss.
Well, I mean, the point is that I asked my mother, I confronted my mother about it, and she said, yeah, we knew he was gay, but back then people were discreet.
Except for his backyard.
They were all wearing tuxedos and sipping martinis, and they had cigarettes with long cigarette holders, and their hair was slicked back, and they just didn't talk about these
Plus,
matters.
I'm sure Rock Hudson,
People knew how to keep a secret.
like Cary Grant had a male roommate for 12 years. Randolph Scott? I mean, but they were all Cary Grant was a hell of a guy. Rock Hudson was a hell of a guy. I mean, it's like, yeah, okay, so they get with dudes. Like, is it that big a deal?
Marlon Brando, wasn't he?
It
I
wasn't.
think he'd experiment. Even Hugh Hefner, the king of having sex with women long past the point that it wasn't super gross, tried it with a dude just to see what it was like.
Are you hitting on me?
No. But I would like to say that I'm the one, we've known each other for 30 years, and you came to me when you started to fear that your hair was going away, and I gotta say that your hair's held up a lot fucking better than mine.
I'm glad that that's where that story went, because I've come to you with many confessions and concerns about myself, and I'm glad you
It
mentioned.
doesn't make me want to bang you, it does make me jealous of your hair.
I'm glad you mentioned the thing about hair, and not something much darker. So, so anyway, are there any other questions?
One more thing.
Okay.
I found this article. So,
Wait, before you go on, since you brought up my hair, it turns out that Rick is the man that saved my hair, and because he
You don't
said,
have a disease,
because
right?
because it
Oh, you know
turns
what?
out
Kinda
that
sick.
Rick got me started on this drug called Propecia 30 years ago.
Oh.
And unfortunately, one of the side effects of Propecia, if you're not careful, is you can't get an erection.
That's why my penis
Rick-
doesn't have a nickname.
So Rick has, you know, I have a lot to thank Rick for. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead with what the next subtopic
So I
is.
think you'll find this delightful. And me less delighted with it. So the Trump administration has come up with this policy called, I think, Asylum in Place, something like that, where you come to America, or you come to the border, if you came up through South and Central America, and you apply for asylum in the U.S. Meanwhile, you wait in Mexico for your case to be heard. And there are currently something like, or 47,000 people are doing it that way. 10,000 of them have been processed. Now, out of 10,000 people applying for asylum, play a game, tell me how many people got a yes, you deserve asylum from the court?
6.
Double it.
12.
11.
Okay.
11. So that's one person in 900. Under previous administrations.
Sounds about right.
Really? I mean, only one person out of nearly 1,000 has been found to deserve. All these people who hauled ass, who trudged 1,500 miles from Costa Rica up through whatever other shit, Panama, and up through the Isthmus of shit, and through, you know, Mexico, and made it to the border, 40 days of, anyway, only one person in 1,000 deserved, because they were afraid of getting knifed in their fucking favela. One person in 1,000 deserves it. In previous administrations, the rate was one person in 5, 20%.
Great.
So
that's-
I'm just thinking that there's maybe a number between, if you don't like 20%, I'm thinking there's a number somewhere between 20% and the current rate of 1/10 of 1%. That might be a happy medium.
Okay, that means he's pausing, so I'm going to respond now.
Go ahead.
Okay. I have to say this in every show. The Democrats have accepted, he's going to say 11 million, I'm going to say 25 million illegal aliens into the United States. Since the 60s since the 60s, they've pulled in 60 or 70 million people. Okay? The Democrats did this because they knew that immigrants voted Democrat 80% of the time. So that by doing this, they were able to change not only the ethnic makeup of the country, but they were able to change several states in the Union, among them California, to Democrat. And so the Trump administration has made the logical decision that, number one, we don't need any more immigrants coming to the country and driving wages down. Because as soon as they get here, the first thing that happens is blue-collar wages, particularly hard hit, are black workers who are struggling for those jobs. They're hit the hardest by illegal immigration. So the Trump administration thought, we don't need any more illegals or basically really any more immigrants, particularly in this country. And the system that the Democrats had figured out was to bring lawyers down to South American and Central American and Mexican villages and tell them that they could come to the U.S. and claim that they were being oppressed and needed asylum. Asylum is what you get if your country is invaded by another country and you're escaping, you're a refugee, one.
Hold on.
Or, no,
I'm just-
no, don't interrupt me. I have to do it every single
I've got a
show.
question.
Every
I think
single
you're
show.
going to answer the
Every
question. Go ahead.
single
Go
show.
fucking go ahead. I mean,
Okay. Two, there are people that are refugees seeking asylum because they're oppressed in their own country.
By their own government?
By their own government, because they're the wrong religion or the wrong ethnic group, and they're political asylum seekers who have maybe criticized El Presidente. So there are legitimate asylum seekers. But what the Trump administration has laid bare is that 99% of these people just want to be able to make more money. They're living in countries that are poverty-stricken. They don't give a crap who the government is. They just want to get the hell out of poverty. So they're coming to America where the streets are paved with gold and driving the wages down. So that's why this is happening, Rick. I'm sorry. And by the way, one final thing. Rick sometimes pulls this out of his ass. He says, well, we're compassionate to the poor. And it turns out that scientifically, if you just give aid to people in their own country, it actually helps them. It requires far less money to bring aid to a village in Guatemala than to bring Guatemala to California.
Or both. Okay, so I make no secret that I'm not great at this show, that I'm not the best debater, and I've just realized there's the point I should have been making 2.5 years ago or more. When you're saying that immigrants come to America and then they vote eventually, they or their offspring vote Democratic. You don't say Democratic, you say Democrat because it sounds worse. Then you're saying, well, it's not for you, it's not a human rights issue. It's purely an issue about political victory.
No, I immediately said right after that they depress the wages for our own American.
Yeah, there have been studies, and the depressing of wages is on the matter of just a few percent.
No, but it does, and it not only does it depress the wages, but it's particularly hard hitting to our own black and Hispanic population.
I don't want to look.
And that's why Cesar.
That's been largely debunked.
No, it has not been debunked, and that's why Cesar Chavez was against illegal immigration. Cesar Chavez, for those of you that are too young to remember, was a big, big proponent of Hispanic rights, and he used to beat up with his other union thugs illegal aliens that would come in and drive the wages down for Hispanic farm workers. So this is not purely political. Our country doesn't need millions of new poor people.
Well, and I always have to do the math, which you hate, but if you look at, over the past 40 years, 50 years, we've let in 60 million immigrants. That works out to less than 0.5% per year of the U.S. population, which is pretty consistent with the overall history of the U.S., except for the very early days when 100, in 1621, when the Mayflower landed, 100%.
Year 1621.
There you go.
But do we have to let him ruin the show?
It doesn't. It gets you pissed. And see, people love that. I'm sure there are fans of you getting pissed at that.
All right.
Anyway, what else? Are we done? Do we have anything else?
I'm going to wrap us up, but I'm going to say this. Okay, first of all, this is the longest period of uninterrupted mass immigration that we've had, at least in the past 150 years. So don't tell me that this is the way it's always been.
No, but that's I kind of, well, not in 150 years, but in 70 years.
All right, so I'm going to say this, all right? We're going to wrap up the show, so I want to talk about when you donate to the show. I would like to thank a man named Kalen Bashiu, or Bashiu. I don't know how to pronounce it.
His name.
Now here's the thing. If you don't want to contribute to if you don't want your name mentioned when you contribute to our show, then we won't, unless you specify in the contribution that you don't care, that you're happy if we mention your name. So I would like to thank Kalen Bashiu.
Gesundheit.
All right. And Melanie learning PayPal. And I think
She learned it well enough to give us money. Thank you, Melanie.
All right. And then the way to contribute to our show
is our PayPal account is Lance versus Rick at paypal.com, LANCEVSRICK.
It's down below. Say it's down below.
Oh.
No, it's not at PayPal.
I
No.
mean at gmail.com.
All right,
sorry.
let's try this again. It's lancevsrick at gmail.com.
It's down. It's
Yeah, it's at the bottom.
Yeah, you're going like this, but that's
on our
sexual
show.
harassment. That's Larry H. Come here, Larry H. Come see Larry H. Pocket in his office.
Yeah. All
well,
right.
the website is down in the description section. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we know. It's in the description section of the show. But also...
And thank you. We appreciate it hugely. My wife is very unimpressed with this deal. I say, I'm going to work tonight. She goes, work? Like, she doesn't think this is work.
Well, it's a lot, as you can see. I mean, poor Rick, it's affected his health. And I feel like it's my patriotic duty. And I'd like to continue doing the show at least until Trump is reelected.
Oh my God! Like,
Does that seem like a good plan? Till
what
November.
will happen if that happens? Watchmen. Spoiler alert. There's a character on Watchmen who, in the season finale, is basically reduced to pudding. He or she is basically obliterated and is turned to a red soup. And if Trump gets reelected, I'm pretty sure that's what's going to happen to me.
Why?
Because it's just 4 more years of the decay of what makes our country good.
All right. With that,
Will that be Biden's name? Make America good again?
Yeah, make it like the part of making America good again is being able to leave the government unobserved for days at a time, where you walk away from CNN, from Fox, from MSNBC on a Wednesday, and you check back in on the next Monday to see if anything weird happened. And nothing weird happened. Obama wore jeans, with high-waisted jeans, while riding a bicycle, and he looks like a dad. And that's like, okay, all right, that doesn't seem like the decay of all morality. That doesn't freak me out.
do you like the idea of boys getting dressed with the females in high school in their locker rooms?
Who wants to do that?
That's what the transgenders did. They do that all over the country now. And that was something Obama was continuously supportive of.
Well, I mean, personally, at 16 years old, that might have gotten me to go out for a sport.
I should not have brought up high school with Rick again.
Seeing Tinka Evans in her underwear?
Oh, jeez.
Oh, my God.
I asked
Oh, my
for
God.
that.
Oh, my
I
God.
asked for that.
Hindi bear,
Not
half bear.
Not only do I have to be right in the argument, but I have to be able to ignore subjects that will get him excited. But I mean,
You got to see girls in their underwear in high school when you went to Pally High. Probably some of the most beautiful, sun-blasted, surfy, stoner girls. Oh, yeah, you go, yeah,
By the way, Lance, can you give
you don't look
Rick-
important because you had sex with hot girls in high school. You don't need to. It's right there.
Can you give Rick a Hanukkah present? He gave you one at the start of the show.
a Hanukkah present?
Where I said all the pro-Trump talking points with
Oh.
great...
It's only fair that you give.
Oh, here's a Hanukkah present. It turns out that you've been married happily for how many
Almost
years?
29 years.
29 years. Well, look, I don't want to say anything about the lovely and honorable Mrs. Rick Rosner, but it turns out that happily married people have more sex than single people, even if the single people are smooth operators and are getting
Yeah.
laid now and then. So think about it that way.
Okay, well,
In the aggregate, since numbers are all that matter to you, probably more sex to the married guy than the smooth operator.
no, well, I mean, that makes
remains
sense.
single.
I'd say I gave you a Hot Wheels track and a couple cars, and I'd say that you gave me, you know, a 3-pack of underwear, which, you know, it's fine, but it's not, you know, saying a bunch of liberal talking points with great sincerity.
Oh, all right. I think we can wrap it up.
Okay.
Good night.
Thank you. That was fun.
Yeah, I guess I hate you less than last week, so.
Why? Because you scored all these fucking points?
Tonight was just a very amicable show. We didn't have any big disagreements. I yelled once to stop interrupting me, but it wouldn't be our show if I didn't do that.
JD, you devastated.
Oh, are you still filming? God damn!
Did I devastate the chicken?
Yeah.
Oh my god, I know. I was super hungry.